there Johnny Herbert enjoying himself on a wet circuit. All drivers, well, they did some wet weather testing just in case Sunday was going to be a wet day. Martin Brundle, food poisoning, as I said, stayed in bed all Saturday. Times did not improve, and Brundle had to start this race from a low 13th grid position. Teammate Michael Schumacher was up into 5th position. Well, Schumacher has signed for next year for the Benetton team, and Martin Brundle's future is a little bit unknown. There's still possibility, or he thinks there's still a possibility he might go to Williams. His name's on the list at McLaren, and his name's on the list at Jordan. Well, whatever happens, we'll see with Martin. We talked to his teammate, Michael Schumacher.
The McLaren, I would say, since the last 3 races, they have done a lot of work, and they're in front of us. Even in qualifying work before, we was quite close to them and sometimes quicker than them. Especially here, we know they have special engines, and that's why they're able to be so far in front of us, and therefore I would say the situation is quite fine for us. I'm in 5th, and we saw how much it was possible with the car, and I tell you, the car is really fantastic, but that's the limit. I just hope for tomorrow, as we saw today in rain condition, we looked pretty well, and I hope we have a bit of rain, maybe half and half race, that may change everything, and we would look a bit better. We just hope, and we just can hope in this situation to be further in front.
Of course, a half-half race earned Michael Schumacher his very first Grand Prix victory in Spa earlier this year. There's Martin Brundle on his way back to the hotel, still finding a little bit of time to sign some autographs. And not only Martin Brundle, but of course a hero in Japan, whose band, well, was his band. A hero in Japan, Ayrton Senna, signing autographs. And Ayrton, for the last time, well, for the moment, for the last time anyway, the last Grand Prix, the last Japanese Grand Prix with the Honda on the circuit where he's clinched his first World Championship and had many good races in the past.
It's been very important in my career.
Take a sabbatical or stay with McLaren. There's even a rumour now that he might go to Ferrari, and that would make the way free for Jean Alesi to go to Williams and partner Alain Prost. But in Japan, things did not go too well for Honda. Of course, for the 10th time in this season, they got out-qualified by the Williams team, and for the 10th time, I mean the Williams lockout on the front row. Mansell on pole position, his 13th of the season, and Riccardo Patrese on the front row as well. But then it was the McLarens being off the pace. Ayrton Senna being a second slower than Nigel Mansell, and Gerhard Berger a massive 2.6 seconds slower. But then of course we did not have that Saturday qualifying session, but there were more problems for Senna in qualifying when an engine let go. Mansell was not the only one to hit problems. Nigel Mansell spun when he came across Thierry Boutsen, a little misunderstanding, and the world champion spun off. But he didn't, he also spun in the wet. Ayrton Senna watching proceedings, and Nigel Mansell doing the same thing that happened near the end of the session. And here we see Riccardo Patresi's car. It was Adrian Newey talking to Riccardo. And Riccardo being back after that massive shunt in Portugal on the front row, discussing things with Nigel Mansell about, well, oversteer I suppose. And Mansell, the car got away from him in the qualifying session, the first qualifying session on Friday, and again it got away from him when he just put the power on a little bit too early in the wet. see the car racing itself and going down again. Well, that's what active suspension does for you. Probably just going through the program to make sure whether it does what it's supposed to do. We're going to take another small break here on Eurosport, and then we're back with more Formula 1, where a massive crowd enters the circuit. Again, some 3.5 million ticket applications. Of course, there weren't 3.5 million spectators, but it is a capacity crowd as ever here at Suzuka. On the Sunday morning, the weather was nice. Olivier Grouillard driving in with his visible trainer on the back, and of course for the drivers there's always the drivers briefing, and this is the end of it. Most drivers usually joking when they come out of the drivers briefing. And that is the Formula 1 stars ready to race. Nicola Larini, for the first time he starts the Grand Prix this year, while Riccardo Patrese and Gerhard Berger get on the first and second row respectively. It's a long time, as we know, between when they actually get on the grid and when they start to race, so some drivers get out of the car, relax, and some, like Ayrton Senna, decide to stay in the car with their helmets on. But not only drivers, you find some other stars as well here. Kim Wilde, being in Japan with Renault to make a promotional film, and she spent some time chatting to Nigel Mansell and looking at the cars. Well, Ayrton Senna, I think for the first time this year, is actually out of his car on the grid. Then we're going to start. We go to the start of this race, a race which is going to be 53 laps around the Suzuka circuit, which is a total of 192 miles. And again, if you look on the left, Riccardo Patrese was the man with a slightly better start. At the back, it's a good start from Martin Brundle, who gains quite a lot of places. But again, Nigel Mansell puts his foot down on that first corner and takes the lead. And look what a massive lead he has after about 3 or 4 corners. Nicola Larini stalls his engine, but he gets push started and away he goes with that active sprung Ferrari. Mansell, this is where he spun on the Friday afternoon qualifying session, and he has a massive 2-second lead after 1 lap. Then it's Riccardo Patrese, then it's Ayrton Senna. These the onboard pictures from Ukio Katayama's Venturi de Rousse. Senna trying to stay with Patrese on those early laps. We knew they're going to be tyre stops. Goodyear said there were going to be tyre stops between lap 20 and 25, but here we see Ayrton Senna going slower and slower, and there's definitely a problem with the car. He was in 3rd place, and on the 2nd lap Ayrton Senna is out of the Japanese Grand Prix, and that is not what the Japanese came for. So a disappointing start for the Brazilian. The McLaren team waving to the crowd. But what happened with Senna on that 2nd lap?
I think there was a problem with the pneumatic system of the valves, and so I had to pull out and I couldn't continue. It is an odd problem, never happened before. It is probably just a minor thing that just happened in the engine, but I don't think it's due to a high performance or too much power.
While Nigel Mansell kept extending his lead, there are more people out. There's not a very high retirement rate, but slowly but surely people were retiring from this year's Japanese Grand Prix. The man who was just looking forward was Nigel Mansell. And there we see top right-hand corner, you see the speed in kilometers an hour that Gerhard Berger is doing. We had that through qualifying, and it's a nice little Japanese speedometer. And the speeds, well, the highest speed was just under 300 kilometers an hour. And that's the fastest point of the circuit, just before that very fast left-hander up to the chicane. Gerhard Berger with behind him Michael Schumacher, then it's Johnny Herbert in the Lotus, followed by his teammate Mika Häkkinen. Here we ride with the winner of the Belgium Grand Prix, Michael Schumacher. This is the Ehhez, the very twisty bit of the Suzuka circuit. And there's part of the circuit where Schumacher really gains on Gerhard Berger, and other parts where Berger sort of gets away from Schumacher again. But behind Michael Schumacher, it's Johnny Herbert who really tries to stay with that Benetton, and Mika Häkkinen just having a nice tow, going with his teammate, and we had both Lotus drivers in the point at this moment in time. But the gap between Mansell and Gerhard Berger, as we see, was already 17 seconds, and this is still very early days in the race. Well, Olivier Grouillard is out, sitting on the Armco, not knowing what happened. Well, he just went off. While Nigel Mansell set his fastest lap of the race, or one of the fastest laps of the race, very early on. The man we expected early in for tyres, Gerhard Berger, came in for tyres very early indeed. A pit stop by the McLaren team, and it was to be a very good one. 5.5 seconds for 4 new tyres. Michael Schumacher is driving back to the pits slowly. His car doesn't want to go the way Schumacher wants it to go. It just really doesn't want to go at all. So Michael Schumacher retires from this year's Japanese Grand Prix. And of course, the Eurosport camera is down in the pits to ask Schumacher what happened.
We had a gearbox failure. First the third gear went off, then the fourth and fifth went off, and with the second and sixth, it makes no sense to stay out in the race. It was not hard for me. I mean, I have no problems with this, and my car was really fantastic. But unlucky you have it or you don't have it, and this time we had it the whole year. We had a lot of luck, and why we shouldn't have unluck as well.
Martin Brundle was moving up the order, still suffering from that food poisoning, although he did feel much better on Sunday. And of course the adrenaline flowing, Martin was going forward all the time and up the leaderboard. Next on the retirement list is Johnny Herbert, or was Johnny Herbert I should say. Herbert, who finished in France, a very good point scoring position there, where he finished 6th, and he did not see the checkered flag till, or after that. He retired in Britain, he retired in Germany, he retired in Hungary, he retired in Belgium, Italy and Portugal, and now he retires here in Japan. So again,
it was the gearbox broke, so a bit of a shame. The car was very, very, very good. I think podium would have been no problem, but as again, I didn't finish the game.
Anyway, Johnny didn't finish yet again, but maybe at a later on. He still got one more chance. Martin Brundle's pit stop took a little longer, 8.8 seconds, and now Mika Häkkinen was very comfortable in 4th place. Brundle was up to 5th place after all the pit stops had settled. And another, or a good performance, came from Tristan Fittipaldi as well. He said the car was very nice to drive in the warm-up, although it was only 24th fastest. He said the car is very good, and he had a very good feeling for the race. And he was in the top 10 straight from the start. Brundle on new tyres, overtaking Fittipaldi. Fittipaldi taking no chances. He really needs and deserves a good result. Mika Häkkinen still in 4th place. He had a handy cushion over Martin Brundle, and he could not catch the drivers in front, Berger, Petresi and Mansell. So Lotus was on course for another 4th place. Mansell was still going faster and faster. And the world champion was in a league of his own. He was just faster than anybody else. Whatever Riccardo Petresi tried to do, Mansell would just find that extra little bit. And then Riccardo Petresi's turn to come into the pits and change tyres came first. Williams bringing their second driver in first and then bring Nigel Mansell in, while Gerhard Berger already has had a tyre change. And here we see the speedometer again. Massive acceleration and deceleration from these cars. And then it's time for Riccardo to get into the pits and get out of the pits. Not a very fast pit stop, but a very average pit stop, I would say. But in and out of the pits. And then we're waiting for Nigel Mansell to come in and change his tyres. And of course Mansell can take it very easy into the pits. He has this 20-second lead over his teammate. Look at this. Relaxed, coming in, no worries. The team taking no chances. 6.7. Well, it's still very quick, but it's also a good second slower than what McLaren did with Gerhard Berger. The next man on the retirement list is Mauricio Guzman, who had an almighty shunt here in Suzuka. He rode off the Jordan Yamaha. Mauricio, another man who doesn't know yet what he's going to do in Formula 1 next year. Another man who's on the lookout for a Formula 1 drive. And there we saw bits of flying bodywork, and that's where it came from. Mauricio went off in a very big way indeed. Coming in with Jean Alesi, changing tyres on the Ferrari. And there we see that 5.47, and that was the fastest pit stop of the race. And listen to that Ferrari engine. Teammate Nicola Larini, who had to start dead last, is making steady progress all through the race, although they did find that Ferrari a little hard to handle on full tanks, the Ferrari with the active suspension, but Larini was going faster and faster all the time. Slow pit stop for tyres, but again Larini on his way. Gerhard Berger, and undoubtedly we see the speedometer in a minute, or in a second even. There we see it coming up. I wonder whether we should have this at more Grand Prix, and places like even like Monaco, the acceleration and deceleration of these cars is very impressive indeed. And this, by the way, is 22 seconds, the gap between Nigel Mansell and Gerhard Berger. Well, so Mansell leads Riccardo Petresi, Gerhard Berger, Mika Häkkinen, and then Martin Brundle. That is the top of the Japanese Grand Prix here at the moment. We see Gerhard Berger just not dropping 299, nearly 300 kilometers an hour. with the tanks getting empty, and maybe with another new set of tyres for Gerhard Berger, he should be able to get just over 300 Ks for the Austrian. Of course, won here last year and in 1987. Well, we know the top 5 here at Suzuka. It's time for us to get our last little break, and then we join us, or please join us again here on Eurosport. Eurosport, and as we see, we've got 25 laps to go in this year's Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka, and Nigel Mansell still having that very healthy lead over teammate Riccardo Patrese. There, Christian Fittipaldi, and Mansell waiting, taking his time to put a lap on Fittipaldi. Probably at the hairpin, that is where it's been done. And at this stage, Riccardo Patrese was getting closer and closer to Nigel Mansell. While just outside the top 5, Andrea de Cesaris and Eric Comas were fighting for position. There we see Jean Alesi going through as well. Alesi on the attack, passing Christian Fittipaldi. There we see Aguri Suzuki, a man who did not have the happiest of times in Suzuka. He qualified 16th only on a circuit where he had his best result ever in Formula 1 when he finished on the rostrum. And was the first Japanese driver to finish on the rostrum for a Formula 1 Grand Prix, and that was way back in 1988. Sorry, 1990, of course. There, Andrea de Cesaris going around the outside of Eric Comas into that first corner. A very brave maneuver by de Cesaris, and by this time Nigel Mansell had decided it was time to let Riccardo Patrese lead the race. There we see our new race leader. We see Nigel Mansell in the background. As he said, he just wanted Riccardo Patrese to win this Grand Prix. If you can hear that from the man himself later on in this program. So now Riccardo Patrese leads, Nigel Mansell is second, Gerhard Berger is still third, and behind those nothing has changed either. Next retirement on the retirement list is Eric Comas with the Ligier Renault. A Renault engine which just stopped working. We don't see that very often, but we did see it here in Suzuka. He says, well, it's a pity, because it all began very well. I was in the points, I was in 5th place. The engine fails, and just lack of oil pressure. Well, racing is a mechanical sport, and there's always something, you know, that can go wrong with the engine. Well, they finish quite often, and even, I mean, especially this year, it's been really, really good. But this time the oil pressure just went down, 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 and it just stopped. There we see the leaders of the race. Riccardo Patrese followed by Nigel Mansell. And of course the fight of this Grand Prix is the second place in the championship, and with Michael Schumacher and Ayrton Senna out of this year's Grand Prix, Patrese wants to get that second place back. Well, these are teammates as well, Okio Katayama and Bertrand Gachot. And I suppose Bert would say it's another misunderstanding again. Katayama and Gachot, well, they did have a little mishap in Canada as well. Riccardo Patrese leads Nigel Mansell. Here we see another fight. There we see Michele Alboreto, Gianni Morbidelli, then Andrea de Cesaris, who's well on his way to being lapped from Riccardo Patrese and Nigel Mansell, but de Cesaris very slowly getting into the points. The second time this year Nigel Mansell was conceding this race to his teammate, and for the second time also his Grand Prix would end in tears, because Mansell would not finish this year's Japanese Grand Prix. Suddenly, with 11 laps to go, it all went bang, totally wrong, when his engine caught fire. And there we see a blown Renault engine, the second one in this race after Eric Gomez lost all his oil pressure. But that is not what Nigel Mansell wanted. On the circuit, he just hasn't had the best of luck.
Everything was working perfectly, and I conceded first position to my teammate, and I was just sitting in second place, taking it easy, not pushing too hard, and you know, I was very happy, and the laps were going by. There was only, I think, 11 laps left, and then bang, the engine let go. So one of those things. Motor racing engines do that occasionally.
As we all know, Nigel, John Alesi now in 5th, Fittipaldi in 6th, and Stefano Monona there with the Jordan Yamaha is in 7th place. And of course Mika Häkkinen is still in 4th position with that Lotus, and that could well be the best another time that he has a 4th place, because Mika Häkkinen has had 4th places before this year, when he finished 4th in France and Hungary. But for Mika, it was not to be. The engine stopped, and so did Mika's race. There he is, in the middle of our screen. It started so well for Team Lotus.
And exactly that lap when I stopped, I could finish in 3rd place. But unfortunately, engine broke, and I have to stop. 10 laps to go or something. I could have been 3rd, because the Branda was behind me about 20 seconds. And I have a feeling I can still push harder and harder, and make even quicker lap times. But that time it wasn't any point. It was just the main thing to take it easy, and especially because it was quite a lot of oil on the track. But engine blew up. It blew up.
Well, it did blow up. Mika, anyway, a sad day for Team Lotus, which started so well. The team still doing wonders on a low budget with that Ford HB engine. Running with Martin Brundle, and Brundle, well, I don't think he thought he was going to finish this high up when he woke up on Sunday morning. And neither did Gerhard Berger, probably for that matter. When Riccardo Patrese, he wins the Japanese Grand Prix here at Suzuka. Riccardo Patrese, his 6th Grand Prix victory. Gerhard Berger will finish in 2nd position, and Martin Brundle in 3rd position. We're on our last lap with the Italian, who will start his 239th Grand Prix by the time we get to Adelaide. It's another victory for the Williams team, and Riccardo Patrese is back in 2nd place for the 1992 World Championship. Well, and how happy are you when you win? We can see that with Riccardo Patrese, but how happy are you when you get your first Formula 1 points?
The race was fantastic. This morning I was 24th, but I was really confident. I only ran this morning on very old tires, and a lot of people went out on new tires, so I didn't worry a lot with my times, but I worry how the car was, and I knew that the car was very good. So as soon as I hopped off the car this morning, I went to Giancarlo and I said, maybe I'm wrong, but I think today the car is very, very good. And I wasn't really worried where I was after the warm-up, and in the race it showed. I just started, I went for it. The car worked a little bit better in the beginning, but then it still went quite well towards the end, but the performance wasn't the same as in the beginning. But still, I'm really, really happy. I learned a lot today, and I hope this is my first of many points in Formula 1.
Very happy Christian Fittipaldi in 6th, behind Jean Alesi in 5th, Andrea de Cesaris in 4th, Martin Brundle, Gerhard Berger, and the winner, Riccardo Patrese. 1 hour 33 minutes, which is a minute slower than Gerhard Berger winning time last year. There's the rest of the finishers here at Suzuka, with 15 finishers from 26 starters, only 11 retirements.
On a pris ces 2 petits points.
Jean Alesi, well, we got 2 points. I'm disappointed with the results because a Ferrari driver cannot be happy with 5th place. But my hopes are on next year. We've got to get a competitive engine and we've got to get a competitive car, and then everything it is okay. But the engine is really bad. The engine is not up to it. That's what Alesi says. And so congratulating Riccardo Patrese, who, as I said, takes over 2nd place in the championship. And with 1 Grand Prix to go, the fight is on for that remaining, or for that 2nd place in that championship, and it's still between Riccardo Patrese, Michael Schumacher and Ayrton Senna. Well, Riccardo says, I just, you know, kept hoping and hoping and working away, and it's a victory achieved through suffering, he says, for the last 2 races. I didn't think of winning, but only of getting back 2nd place in the championship. So, you know, this gives me really, really a lot of pleasure. And if all goes well, I should go to Adelaide and confirm my 2nd place in the championship, which is the maximum I can do this year. The best place in the World Championship of my Grand Prix career, and for the team it is very good. It's a victory I think I deserved because of all the development work I did all over the winter. But I'm going to Adelaide with a lot of confidence and a boosted morale.
Che ho messo dentro a questo programma a partire dall'inizio dell'inverno fino anche diciamo alle ultime gare. Vedi Monza che ha avuto dei problemi, o addirittura in Ungheria.
So that's Riccardo Patrese. In Adelaide he starts his 239th Grand Prix, and in South Africa next year his 240th Grand Prix start.
Cercando di finire ancora meglio in bellezza questo.
So on the rostrum, Patrese in the middle, Berger on the left and Brundle on the right, and that is the rostrum from Japan. Of course, in 2 weeks' time, the Australian Grand Prix, and you can see qualifying Friday morning,